Hi, I'm Mike King, Editor-in-Chief of the Diamondback. I'm here with Yasmeen Abutaleb, Senior Staff Writer for the Diamondback. Yasmeen wrote a feature on University President Wallace Loh for the October 31st edition of the Diamondback. Delves into his life's history, and I've got some questions for her. So what inspired you to write this story?
I started meeting regularly with President Loh my sophomore year, so about 1 year into his presidency. And since then, I've spoken with him regularly through different roles at the Diamondback. And I just knew he had a really interesting story, but I'd never gotten really down into the weeds with it. So I decided when I had time to spend 2 months, following him around and asking him a lot of questions about his life story, that, a lot of students would be interested in who he is and where he came from, and it's a pretty unusual story.
Yeah, I've read it, and it's great. What's the day-to-day process for covering a story like this?
I had to find a lot of different events to shadow him at. I spent a Saturday at a football game with him, had dinner with him and his wife one night, just to kind of see him in his home and with his family. Saw him at different meetings, different events, talking to various types of people, so I just wanted to see him in a lot of different environments. And then I thought back on everything he's done in his presidency, so looking at old stories, looking at other media coverage of him to see what people thought of him, and then of course just talking to a lot of different people who like him, people who don't really know him, just to kind of get an idea of what the perception is.
Has he done any kind of media shadowing before, or was this sort of a new experience for him too?
As far as I know, he hasn't had at least a single reporter follow him around for a long time and in so many different places. He's had a lot of sit-downs with reporters, especially with the move to the Big Ten. People wanted to know his process and where he came from, so he's done a lot of sit-downs, but as far as I know, he hasn't had someone follow him around for a continued period of time.
So what was the hardest part of writing this story?
He's just had a very full life, and the hardest part was definitely deciding how to organize it, deciding how to portray him so that people got what they needed to know out of who he is and what his story is, and then of course picking and choosing what was in the story and what wasn't. He's the president, and I think everyone wants to know what he's like and where he comes from, so it was taxing trying to decide what goes in and what doesn't.
And how did that all compare to previous stories that you've worked on for the Diamondback?
I've never had that much material or that much information for a single story, and I've never spent so much time focusing on one story. It was a 3-month process, and I've just never had so much material for one story where most of it didn't make it in, and just deciding how to organize it and how to structure it and what was the most important and pertinent information, what was overkill, what was unnecessary.
Great. Well, I think you did a good job choosing the best parts, and you can read the full story in the October 31st edition of the Diamondback, and there will be multimedia content on November 1st.